Good morning, Shanku. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I am fine. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good too. Thank you. So, this is a mock interview. And as you know,
Okay.
this mock interview is there to increase the confidence level or to know how much you are prepared for the upcoming interviews. Even if you don't know the answer, please feel
Mhm.
free to tell. Okay, I'll give you the answer on your behalf. Okay. So, the
Okay.
motive of this interview is just that you should be able to clear your real time interviews in the future. Okay.
Okay.
So, what is the difference between freestyle project and the pipeline project in Jenkins?
Mm, for our cases, I mean, we basically using our freestyle project for any pipeline CI/CD.
Right.
But Jenkins pipeline, I don't know. But in our cases, we generally use freestyle project only in
Okay.
case of Jenkins.
So, freestyle again is a kind of option of a job which will support continuous
Mhm.
integration, and it will
Mhm.
allow you to define sequential task in an application lifecycle. While in case of pipeline, what would happen? It is considered to be more versatile compared to the freestyle. In pipeline,
Mhm.
basically you can optionally stop and wait for the human input, or you can
Okay.
make the next step to run for particular set of actions to get completed. So those kind of flexibility
Okay.
is there in the pipeline option. So both are options of this project only, job only, but
Mhm.
there is a
Okay.
difference. Pipeline is considered more usable compared to freestyle. Okay.
Okay.
So that is
Yeah.
that. Again, one very good point about pipeline is that pipelines can optionally uh, s- stop, and they can also plan, and they can also go for unplanned restarts as per your Jenkins
Mhm.
controller. Okay.
Okay.
So those things are also there for pipeline. Okay. Okay. So what is continuous integration?
Continuous integration is basically, I mean, in recent days, it's become very popular because what happens, we are writing our code, right? I mean, for automation thing, but developers are also changing their code simultaneously. I mean, there are different versions of build are there. So whenever there is a new build, you have to trigger your automation job. Instead of doing this manually or triggering this manually, if you set this continuous integration thing, then whenever there is a change in the developer pipeline, your automation code will be automatically triggered. So that's the best way to, I mean, to channel or write your code instead of triggering this manually. So this is like continuous integration.
Absolutely, absolutely. So successful continuous integration means whatever the code changes that are done to an application or a software, those are regularly built, tested, and merged to a shared repository. Okay. So earlier, what used to happen? People
Right.
used to create their own branches. They used to merge in their respective branches. And when it comes to the master branch, there used to be a lot of merge conflicts in those
Mhm.
areas. And developers' time was getting
Yeah.
wasted in all these things. So they came up with this concept of
Mhm.
continuous integration, which is also called as an automation process for
Mhm.
developers. Okay. So that is that.
Okay.
Now, what is map in Java?
Map basically a class in, I mean, a class in collection.
Mhm. Collection.
Map is an interface.
Right,
HashMap
right.
is a class. You
Mhm.
can, I mean, you can implement that interface, and
Mhm.
basically you can insert your data in a key and value format.
Mhm.
There is a lot of use in our case, in our project, Selenium, the HashMap concept.
Okay.
I
How are we
mean, there
using
is one null
HashMap
key,
then?
multiple null values are there.
Sorry, can you
Uh,
please come
like,
again?
mm, yeah. So suppose you have a word,
Huh.
okay, a string, like automation, right? And there is a requirement that client wants to know how many characters are there, each individual. I mean, how many times a is there, a u is there. So what you can do, you can take a hash map over there, and you can take first parameter as character and second parameter as integer. That will happen when you will traverse. I mean, first of all, you have to change it to two char array, because you have to distinguish each of the character from that string, and
Mhm.
you want to traverse the full, I mean, you want to traverse the full character array, and you want to insert each of the character in that hash map. Then I mean, if there is any entry of A, you just increase that count with 1. If there is no entry of character A, you just enter that value as 1. I mean, such a way you can just put print the value like how many times it is A is there, each character sequences is there.
Right. So this is a wonderful example, and you almost nailed this question. Good thing. Okay. So what is TDD?
TDD is basically a test driven approach.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I mean, you have to write the code first, then you have to make that code fail, then you have to again work on that code to make it pass, and last step is you have to refactor your code. So this is basically the TDD cycle. I mean, if you compare BDD with TDD, that BDD is, and what kind of, more extensive use of TDD, because in case of BDD there is a three amigos concept which TDD does not have. So basically these are kind of approaches, test driven development.
Right, absolutely. And TDD is mostly popular in kind of agile development methodologies, right? And you answered it very right that
Correct.
it basically gives you an answer to your question, is the code valid? Okay. So intention of this technique is to modify or to write a fresh code only if your test fails. Then only you will refactor your code. Otherwise, you are not
Yeah.
going to touch your code. Okay. Now, what is refactoring?
Refactoring means to make your code more clean, more readable, and more bug free. Because if there is, there is some, like I'm giving you an example. Suppose there is a variable in your code and you are never going to use it. It will not give you an error, but obviously it's not a best practice to use any variable that you won't be using in your code, right? Suppose you are using two different for loops, whether that can be achieved with a single for loop. So that is more that's a best practice. So these kind of things you can name as refactoring.
Right. So refactoring is nothing but it is the process of modifying the code without actually changing the behavior or functionality. Okay. So in many of the organizations, people are facing some kind of performance testing issues once they have developed the user stories. Okay. So
Yeah.
at the time of testing those stories or in the same sprint, they won't come to know about these issues. But when they will go for integration testing, then they'll come like, okay, no, this slowness is coming into this page, this API is taking too much of time. So then this refactoring comes into the picture, where the developer would try to you know consolidate, or I would say he will work on his code and he will try to use some kind of solid principles that are available, and just to make sure that the performance testing issues or other issues are not getting coming up in the QA environment or in any environment. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you were mentioning about this BDD, right? So, how does BDD help in SDLC?
BDD is basically behavior driven development. Okay.
Mhm.
So when it comes to without any BDD format, what happens? Basically, I'm giving you an example from our project only, because we are following the agile process. And in case of agile and BDD, what happens? Business stakeholder, developers, QA people, all are coming together. So you have to make those business stakeholder understand what you are actually writing. If you are writing your code in a more readable format, in simple language, it will be easier to understand the business stakeholder, also developer, and all the stakeholders that are related to your project, that what your test case is actually doing. So if you are, Cucumber is kind of thing that we can adopt as a part of BDD. So in Cucumber, if you are writing your feature file in a Gherkin language, so given when, then, and, feature, background, this kind of keyword you can use to write your test cases. So it will be a more readable format to everyone. Not only QA, but also anyone who is writing, give a glance to your code, he can understand what this test case is all about. So basically, this is the main concept of BDD, behavior-driven project.
Absolutely. So BDD will pull each and everyone, the technical users as well as non-technical users, and they will be able to collaborate using the simple plain English language, right? While what happens in SDLC, if they find the defects at a later stage and then they have to go for a debugging, So it might take a lot of cost and like a lot of time and resources also at the later stages of SDLC. While BDD will trigger all these things in the initial phases of the SDLC. That's why BDD holds importance, you know, in SDLC basically. Okay, so this was good. Uh, okay, now what is the difference between string builder and string buffer?
String builder is builder is non-synchronized and string buffer is synchronized.
Perfect.
So I mean, when there is a so I can elaborate it also. I mean,
Yes,
why
yes.
we are not using string, why you are using string buffer. So if you are using any string using literal only, then you are simply making an immutable object, right? So you cannot change it, right? Even if suppose string m1 equals to abc, then you can concat the string m1 dot concat abc, I mean cd, then it will be abcd, right? But it does not mean that the string has been changed, because there is the reference that is ABC already in our string pool. Okay, so I mean, until and unless it is being garbage collected, it will be there. You cannot change it. But in case of string buffer, when you are writing string buffer equals to new string buffer ABC, and you are just appending that string buffer, then you are just changing itself. I mean, there is no reference in the string pool, and there is no chance that anyone can get that reference. I mean, basically this is the difference between string and string builder. And also builder and buffer are doing the same, but as I mentioned earlier, string buffer is synchronized, string buffer is not synchronized, because multiple threads can act on a single resources, where in case of you are using any synchronized non-synchronized case, you can use the string builder there.
Right. So string buffer is synchronized, and it means two threads cannot call the methods of string buffer simultaneously, while string builder is non-synchronized. So it is not thread safe. Okay. Two threads can call the methods of string builder simultaneously. Okay. Now, which one is more efficient, string builder or string buffer?
In case of performance, string builder is I mean more faster,
More
because it
faster.
is not synchronized.
Right. It is more efficient compared to string buffer. String builder is more efficient compared to string buffer. Oh,
Sure.
great. Okay. So can you tell me the difference between checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions, and errors in Java?
uh, Errors and exception are basically coming from it. I mean, a throwable. Throwable is the main class. I mean, and after that we are coming this class and error. I mean, exception and error. So there are two different type of exception, like checked exception and unchecked exception. So in case of checked exception, you will be getting the error. I mean, at the time of compiling. Like you have to that SQL exception, file not found exception. This kind of exception is checked exception. In case of unchecked exception, there are different types, like array index out of bound exception, then array null pointer exception. This kind of exception, you will be not getting any type of error in your IDE like Eclipse at the time of compiling your project. But when there is any issue at the time of your runtime of your project, you may get this kind of exception. This is kind of unchecked exception. An error like virtual memory error, like you have to clear your disk, like this types of thing. So this is like a error.
Right. So examples of error can be out of memory error. Those are
Out of memory.
right. So that is error. Okay. Now, can you give me an example where you have implemented inheritance in your Selenium framework? Any example?
Okay. In Selenium, what happens? We have a base class, right? In base class, you can write your before and after, because this will be triggered irrespective of any of the test cases. Like your browser will be launched irrespective of your test cases scenario. So if you can just write those before and after in a base class, and you are actually implementing test 1, test case 2, there is different .java file. You can just extend that base class from each of the class file. So if you are writing this one, for every test cases, your browser will be launched, and at the rate after, your browser will be closed. So this is the one of the example of
Right,
inheritance.
absolutely. So this facilitates the reusability of the data of the class, and you don't have to, initialize the same code over and over again. So this is a good example. And extends keyword we are using.
Correct.
So that is there. Okay.
Correct.
What is, yes, yes, Shanku, you are telling something?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So what is method overriding?
Method overriding is like implementing the same method in a parent class. Also, if you are changing something, I mean, suppose you are changing the system out dot println and you are implementing the same method in the child class. So this kind of thing is like a method overriding.
Right. So when we talk about the base class and the child class, both the classes are in a, is a relationship, which is nothing but inheritance only. Okay. So this is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the difference between data-driven framework and keyword-driven framework?
When we talk about data-driven framework, that means you are using any kind of external sheet in your framework to provide the data externally. Like you may have to use your JSON file, you may have to use your config properties, you can use any XLS file, XLX file, and there are multiple API available in the market to read the data from. Like Apache PY is there to read the data from your XLS file, and also forgetting the name anyway. So this is like a data driven framework. When we talk about keyword driven framework, like it's organizational front of view. Any organization can use the keyword driven framework, where like open your browser. I mean, open browser is like a keyword. When you will be using that keyword only in your sheet, like it will be opening your browser. I mean, this keyword concept is there irrespective, I mean, instead of your function that you are actually writing the code in your project. So if you are just using that open browser word in your Excel file, it will be opening the browser only. I mean, this thing is like keyword driven framework.
So keywords that are developed, they represent an action in keyword-driven framework. Okay. So
Mhm,
you'll take a list of keywords which are maintained in a sequence, and they will form your
mhm.
test cases eventually. Okay.
Correct,
So a keyword
correct.
which will be developed once, those can be used in multiple test scripts. So that is keyword-driven. And
Yeah.
data-driven framework, that you are giving an example of parameterization, can take an input from external files.
Yeah.
That is right. Okay. Now, what is the default time in implicit wait?
100 millisecond. I'm not sure. I'm
Okay.
just guessing.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm not
100
sure.
milliseconds. So round about 10 seconds you are telling, right? No, no, you are telling, I
10,
think.
no, no.
Yeah. So the
10
default,
second.
yeah, 10 seconds.
I'm not sure, sir.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay. No issues. So the default waiting time is 30 seconds in that
Okay.
implicit wait. Okay.
Mm.
Between each consecutive test step or command, you can say across the entire test script, they'll wait for a
Mhm.
default time is 30 seconds in that. Okay. Okay. Now, many people tell that, if I use implicit wait, it will have some impact on the find elements. Do you think implicit wait has any impact on find elements?
Uh, I mean, there is a concept like if you just uh,
Mhm.
implement implicit wait once in your project, it will be affecting all the others, I mean, consecutive elements in your project. I mean, if suppose you have implemented one implicit wait at the beginning of your project, and at the line number 100 you are trying to find any element, it is not coming then and there, it will wait like 30 seconds or 40 seconds, whatever the time you have specified earlier, and then it will be giving you any exception. But uh, the effect of, I'm not very sure.
Okay, okay. So what would happen is implicit wait is whenever it is used, it will instantiate the
Mhm.
driver and it will apply to any of the find element mechanism. Okay. Now
Correct.
that is why explicit wait is best, as best as an option in these cases, since explicit wait does not has any influence on the entire driver instance. while
Yeah.
implicit wait is formed to the driver instance. And as soon as you
Mhm.
instantiate the driver, it will apply to any find element mechanism. So first of all, the
Okay.
answer is yes, it does has impact on the find elements. And then this is
Mhm.
the explanation that you can add in that. Okay.
Okay.
Now, can we use implicit wait and explicit wait at the same time?
It's recommended that we don't use implicit wait and explicit wait together, because explicit wait you can explicitly mention the condition, right? Element is to be visible, clickable. So it's on your choice how to define your wait and how to implement your code. So just to make the element forcefully wait, it's always advisable to use explicit wait rather than implementing the implicit wait, because why to wait 30 seconds when you are not finding any element then and there. So it's always better or advisable to use explicit wait instead of implicit wait.
Wonderful answer. Actually, we should not, use both the kinds of weights at the same time. It is against the
Mhm.
best practice. And if you will see also the blogs or any videos on automation framework, they will always tell do not mix implicit and explicit weight. Okay, because what would happen eventually in your test script, you will have to wait for unpredictable wait times. You also won't come to know why it is waiting for such a long time. So those things are getting mixed up when we use both the weights at the same time. Okay. Now, let's say you are into an organization who have just developed the automation framework.
Mhm.
They have got thousands of test cases. The application under testing is also very big. What will be your approach of
Mhm.
moving test into the automation? Which test will you plan to automate first?
Okay, we have our tool ready, right? I mean, we are sure about the tool. I mean, we are obviously using Selenium or
Right,
what?
right. So they have created some automation framework in Selenium itself, and
Mhm.
they hire you as
Okay.
a QA lead over there. And you have manual
Mhm.
testing team, you have automation testing team, and you can see the application, the scope of the application is
Mhm.
very big. Nothing has been automated as of now. So what will be your approach of moving to automation, moving from manual testing test cases to automation test cases? Which test case will you automate first?
Okay, so first our approach will be, I mean, our application under test, how many pages are there? Like starting from the beginning, how many pages you have to traverse to go to the last? Like if you take any example of Amazon payment, then we have to search the product, we have to go to the address location and have to payment for the product, and last we are like confirmation. So there are 4 pages. So we have to like search how many pages are there. So obviously we'll be approaching like POM page object model, because it's a recommended thing in Selenium, because you can differentiate it, your application under different pages, and it will be easier to maintain. Then another thing comes into picture, what approach? I mean, we will be using TestNG only, or we will be using any Cucumber or BDD format, because both of the ways we can achieve the automation. Then I mean, I will recommend Cucumber, because nowadays it's a recommended thing for Three Amigos concept, or also any as a recommended thing where business stakeholder, QA, and developers are is there, it's for the easy to for there to make understand, I mean, what we are writing. Then we can test what are the test cases that actually traverse all the things. I mean, just I mean, not on, I mean, suppose you are writing a test cases which is only about the payment page. So irrespective of doing the same test case automate, if you are automating one test case end to end, that will cover almost all the flows. So I mean, then you have to write your uh, functions that will helpful throughout your project, like util functions. So I mean, maybe I'm losing my answer, but uh, this is the thing I will be
Yeah.
checking.
No, actually, you started it right. Like you were selecting the various options in automation framework based on the approach. And then also you can
Mhm.
add into the answer that first of all, the first priority that I'll move the test case into the automation would be the test cases which will actually touch the user acceptance criteria, or those are from the business perspective. Okay. Let's say if out of
Okay. Yeah.
1,500 test cases, you can identify with your team, maybe you can
Mhm.
do some brainstorming or grooming session with the team and identify 200 to 300 solid test cases which should work as per the client, no matter which release you are doing, 1x, 2x,
Okay.
3x, those test cases
Okay.
should work. So first of all, those test cases are eligible for automation. And then you can decide for this automation frameworks are there, page object model is there, and Cucumber. So
Okay.
these are all the interconnected things. Okay. Now consider
Okay.
an example where you have a team of 5 members and you are given the application to
Mm-hmm.
be tested, but you don't have any BRD, FRDs, you don't have any requirement documents. Even the client is not giving you any requirement documents. You have
Mm-hmm.
sent them an email, you have requested them on Jira, but still they are not providing you any documentation. So how will you start your testing for such application?
Okay. So, I mean, first of all, I will check what type of application it is. I mean, whether it's a travel and transportation domain, whether it's a, uh, it's a mutual fund domain, whether it's a banking domain. Okay, depending on that one, I will start like exploratory testing. Because if you do not have any business requirement, if we do not have any testing artifacts, if we do not have the clear understanding of the project, then we do not have any other option rather than doing the exploratory testing, right? So I mean, we will be checking what are the different pages all together in our application. So we will be like to check what are the full end-to-end flow. We'll just try to explore from ourselves only. Like then we have another, like UI is the thing. Like irrespective of each and every domain, UI is like a constant. You can check whether the UI is like a good readable format or not, because this thing is the thing. It will be. I mean, you do not need any type of business artifacts, right? Because UI is like something you can just look and feel whether it is good or bad. Then yeah, this kind of approach I can take.
Mhm. Right, right. So if the application is there for testing and you don't have any requirements, the option that you are telling is right. And then you have to go for exploratory testing only. And or you can request client to
Mhm.
give the previous versions access, release access, and then you can test, okay, what was happening in the last release, and you can compare, are all those things working properly in this release itself. Okay. Now, let's say you
Mhm.
have a team of 5 members and you have got some
Mhm.
software to be tested. This software was
Mhm.
developed by some other vendor who is not a part of your organization. Okay. Now you have got a team of 5 members. So
Mhm.
how many members you will keep for manual testing? How many members you will assign automation testing?
Uh, Look, I always believe that automation testing comes after the manual testing understanding. Because if I mean, unless and until you have a good understanding of manual testing, what the product is, you are not able to. I mean, you will not be able to automate it properly in a good way. So I will try to understand what the application is. I will try to set up one meeting with the third party, whoever has worked previously on that product, and we'll try to understand how the product is. So if they have an existing test set or test suite ready with them, I can get them, I mean, through email that could you please send us the test suite. There, from there, as you have earlier mentioned, I will go through all the test cases and will we'll finalize 100, 200, 300 test cases, that this is the kind of test suite that we are currently having. Then when we have a good understanding of the test cases, then I will try to I will try to divide our team. Like if those people are like 2 persons are having good programming understanding, right, programming skill, then I will assign those 2 persons, like you people can automate those things. And if the other 3 persons will work on the test cases like a more readable format, more compact. If there is any kind of data is needed, they can use on the data setup thing, because that will be a prerequisite for writing our test, to automate our test cases. So these are the kind of approach I can take.
Mhm. Right, right. So this is a good answer. Until and unless you don't know the behavior, you don't have the manual testing, done or stability into the product, you cannot start from automation testing. So I just put up a confusing question to you so that you can say like, okay, 3 members for manual testing, 2 members for automation testing, but it is always recommended to first complete all the test cycles in a manual via manual testing manner. Okay, then the application is stable, then you can put all the resources or put all the people into the automation testing. But let's say if you have not completed manual testing itself, you cannot start with the automation testing, or else you will just create automation scripts, you won't be able to find bugs. So that is there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Shanku. I'm done with the interview. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. So how was the feedback? I mean,
Yeah.
what on which case I have to improve and all?
Right. So this your Selenium concepts, your automation concepts are proper. And then I added some questions from the test lead perspective because you are already having 7 years of experience. So now people will ask you about
Correct.
people, in interviews, they'll also ask you about people management. Okay. So those things are also good.
Mhm.
So you can apply for test lead position, even you can apply for test manager position as well. Okay. So when you'll go for all those interviews, you'll have all these questions, and those answers were also fine. You just have to work somewhat on the DevOps tool, like Jenkins is there. You know, uh, it is completely maintained or supported by the DevOps team. But just sit with someone who is, a friend of your in the DevOps team, and just ask them that which are the different types of jobs, what is the significance of each job in
Mhm.
that. Okay, so you will be able to take a decision in the future also. Okay, no, this job is good for me, this job won't work for me. Okay, so this kind of decision making you will have to take, because now you are having 7 years of experience. After 8 or 9
Mhm.
years, you will be given a whole responsibility of TCOE. Like you have to create some testing center of excellence in
Okay.
your organization, and you have to come up with some testing standards, testing best practices, whether they are being used in your organization or not. You'll have to nurture your team
Mhm.
members, give them proper training, and they'll ask you all these
Okay.
questions. So you have to take those decisions with
Mhm.
the in coordination, in collaboration with the DevOps team members. But over there, your decision should be
Okay.
impartial one, and then that decision would come on the
Okay.
basis of when you will have all the concepts or detailed knowledge of Jenkins and all those things, because now Jenkins is ruling into the industry. Each and every company, whether it is a mid
Yeah.
scale
True.
or a good MNC, they are always planning to go or implement Jenkins. Okay, so these questions you will get,
Okay.
right? I had some more questions on Jenkins, but then I didn't ask them. I thought like, why don't we can cover automation first? We can cover some questions on test leads and test manager kind of questions as well, because those are also very important. So your
Yes.
overall interview was very good, right? So that is there. Okay.
Okay.
And anything else?
Okay. I have another question, sir.
Mhm.
Yeah. So recently, I mean, we all know for product-based company, they are giving priority on the data structure and algorithm, right? Rather than just being these test cases and programming skill, they are giving the priority of data structure algorithm. If you are very good at those skills, I mean, those things, then you can apply for those jobs. I mean, what your thought on that? I mean, how you can suggest us to prepare ourselves for that one?
Sorry, priority on which thing you are telling?
Data structure and algorithm. I mean,
Data structure and
this
algorithms.
DSA.
Okay, DS and algorithms. Right, right.
Yeah,
Okay. So
correct.
in
So
some
how we can
companies,
improve ourselves? Because
mhm.
yeah,
Yes, yes,
please
please
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Okay, okay. So in some companies, they have come up with some this mindset that they should hire SDETs more, as SDET, right?
Mhm.
Software development engineer test. So person who can also do some development, also do some testing. Okay. Now they need to first evaluate their requirement documents or their projects. The organization should see how many projects are there, what is the level of projects. They cannot recommend each and everyone, they cannot find each and everyone in the market who is having good concepts in data structures and algorithms. Okay, so I'll give you
Okay.
some YouTube channels as well, right? Like Raj is there, or Vikram Aditya is there, Raj Vikram Aditya. So if you search their YouTube channels, their YouTube videos on this, so you'll be able to get many good videos on data structures and algorithms. But then just having a concept or clarity of data structure and algorithm won't make you a good tester. You need to have the testing skills as well. So over here, the companies should see whether they are looking forward for a dedicated automation team, or they really want a testing team first, right? So that
Okay.
that priority, that clear vision should be there into the management of the companies. Like that. Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Anything else, Shanku?
No, that's also.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.